Blame Chris Hall, it was his possums.
Yeah, we've dropped the possums now. The session started, Linda. Go through decorum.
I could tell a joke about sheep.
Okay, so I'm gonna go around the room, and I'm going to ask each of you to come up with a quality that you think is key in being a good sensei. I mean, if it's already been said, see if you can come up with something else. Sean, kicking off with you.
For me, right now, I think the ability to help me connect and understand the founder's vision and teachings.
Okay, so for you, it's a really good grounding in the foundations of Aikido.
Just one quality, yeah.
Yeah, that's all you're allowed for now. John.
Someone who turns up at class week in, week out, year in, year out, even if he doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Can I encapsulate that as reliable?
You can, yeah.
Okay, Vitali.
Yeah, I would say the person, it's a teacher who understands you, who can feel you, who can understand what you need at this time and lead you through that.
Okay, so they're able to intuit wherever their students are at and be able to deliver what they need. Yeah?
Yeah.
Understand you is a really good, quick way of saying that. I'll borrow your words. Andrew.
Someone who sets an example within the dojo for the sort of lower grades to follow.
Can you just expand on that a little bit? What do you want them to be an example of?
All the things that have been mentioned already: reliability, people who turn up, people who, you know, are helpful, and all the things that you'd expect.
Okay, that's cool. Alec?
Honesty.
Yep.
Yeah, I see it as someone who sees themselves fundamentally as a fellow student. They're just further along the path than you are, and they're helping to light your way, but they don't fall into the trap of thinking that they've become superior in some way.
Would that be humility?
That would be humility. Well done. That's really good. Genuine humility. Two words.
You sneaked in two there. Fellow student and humility, but good on you.
Yeah.
Cunning, perhaps, is what they should be.
Oh, you know what I'm like.
Gordon.
Oh, I'd say it's somebody who acts as a guide on the journey.
A guide. Okay, so whose journey?
Well, it's the student's journey.
Right.
And the sensei is there to act as the guide.
Okay. We'll come back to that in a bit. I think that could be an interesting one to explore, actually. Paul?
Someone who teaches the students how to create the art for themselves.
So would you call that an enabler?
Well, yes, in a way. It depends, of course, what he or she is enabling.
Okay, well, enabling the ability to do it yourself, I suppose.
That's good, close enough. Also, it's good spelling.
Yeah. Joe?
I think the ability to seek for something together. So we are both seeking for some curiosity, some learning, teacher and student. So it's a mutual learning. The student brings up a question. Let's investigate that question.
Okay, so together. If I said that they're able to facilitate an exchange, is that good?
Yes, could be. Yeah.
Kevin.
A servant leader.
I like it. Nice one. David?
The ability to inspire you to.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think providing
Oh,
inspiration is important.
All right.
Definitely. Linda?
The patience of a farmer, that nurturing and allowing. You can't force people to grow quickly.
Again, I think you snuck about 4 in there.
Patience.
Patience. Nurturing too. I'm going to let you have that.
Okay.
Steve.
Good quality people management.
Okay, so a good people manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In other words, overall, if there's a problem, you deal with it without hassle or whatever. Just try and work it through with people.
So are we saying a problem solver?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what a manager is, aren't they?
I think it's different to a problem solver, though, Quentin. I think it's a personnel thing, isn't it?
Okay. So what would be ideal words to express what Steve said, in your opinion?
A counsellor.
On occasion.
Or a policeman, perhaps. I don't know.
On occasion. Yeah, I think they have to be all of those things.
Community leader.
Sorry, say that, Linda.
A community leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Steve said a people manager. I think that's
It'll do.
People management. Yeah.
That covers a range of sins, doesn't it? Errol.
I think a good leader, a good teacher needs to be intuitive enough to know what the students need and then be able to teach that successfully.
Okay, so we've already got intuitive, I think. Maybe not quite those words.
But also the ability to be able to teach that.
Yeah, so they can serve the need.
Right, they can translate the need into something that the student can receive and use.
Yeah. Okay. Judith.
I'd like to say trustworthy.
I'd like you to say that too. I think that's good. Thank you. Patrick. I hope you're going to unmute.
Compassion.
Compassionate. Yeah. And the ball bounces back to you, Sean.
Such a good list. I don't know if I have any others. I think it's interesting that some people are talking about qualities I think of as being more about being a teacher or a practitioner, an inspiring fellow practitioner. And some people have brought things up that seem like they're more like business or community oriented, right? Sort of maintaining the community of the dojo, right? And, you know, perhaps these are overlapping but somewhat separate aspects of what we all think a sensei will have to do in these different areas.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of dojos where the community aspect is dealt with by other people in the dojo. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, so it depends on how they're structured, I guess. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's a really good list.
Okay, John?
Yeah, that is a good list. It's like keeping your finger on the pulse, even when you're teaching, so you know exactly what's going on all of the time.
Did somebody say a good business person?
A good business person? I don't think they did. I'll put it down there because it's one to discuss for me, that.
There's one thing I'm noticing about this list. When you say something like a good business person, that doesn't say what kind of goodness you're talking about. It might be somebody who's a great embezzler, or it could be any number of things. All of the, when you reduce it down to one word, you're not saying what the actual quality is. So a people manager, it could be somebody who tortures them to get what he wants out of them.
Let's see if that's what Errol was driving at, shall we?
I was talking more about the economics. To support a dojo, you could have to be economically savvy to a certain extent, or have the people who are involved.
Okay. Perhaps it's
Keeping the dojo financially solvent, I think, isn't it that? So you can actually have a dojo, you know.
Yeah, I can think of people who are very
Yeah.
money savvy when it comes to martial arts in general, not just Aikido. But I don't think that makes them great teachers or examples that I would want to follow. They're just really good at fleecing people of money for any old excuse, really. So it's a double-edged sword. I think there's something in there. Okay, so rather than going around the room, but anyone else want to offer anything?
Yeah, I would like to offer, if we speak about teaching kids, you should be creative to create the way how to reach out for them and to apply some knowledge.
I'm going to say I think you need to be creative with adults too, but with kids, I think you need to have the ability to be playful.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's the only way they'll relate. I'm going to offer empathy. I think they have to be empathetic. Anyone else?
Also honesty. Honesty.
I think we've got honesty, but let me just check.
We have honesty.
Did we have it?
We had trustworthy, so yeah, but honesty's good.
We have honesty.
Linda, did you have one?
Yeah, they need to be able to push people right up to their edge without overfacing or discouraging them.
Okay, so for me, that would be kind of understanding boundaries, taking people to their boundaries wherever that is, and
to their pushing the limits kind of boundaries, but not the like that's close enough kind of boundaries, not like that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and not all boundaries.
They're limits.
Yeah, and there are some boundaries which we should observe and just steer well clear of. But in terms of developing our Aikido skills, we have to be able to know people's boundaries. Yeah.
Expanding boundaries, isn't it, that one?
Yeah. I think sensitive to people's needs, because that's kind of saying what that is.
It's helping people grow.
Yeah. So that gives me another word, generous. I can't think of a good Aikido teacher who's incredibly generous with their knowledge and their desire to assist others.
You have to be generous with your time as well, off the mat and on.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's you've opened up.
If I could just offer one thought here, I would use the word educator rather than teacher. And for the reason for that, the word, the Latin root, is to lead out from, right? E-A-duce. So I think, to me, the teacher, the sensei is more of an educator because they're leading the student out from where they are to some destination.
Okay, so then my next question to you all would have been, not we need to move on to that yet, is going to be, well, what's your definition of what a sensei means? What does that word actually mean? So is it a teacher or an educator or a coach or possibly all of those things?
And to whom?
Yeah.
To all of them.
We don't necessarily share the same definitions.
No, we don't. So what's wrong with the word teacher in your book, Gordon?
Oh, I don't have any objection to the word teacher. I just think educator is a better description, at least of how I see the role of the sensei.
It's clearer for you.
Yeah, well, teacher is somebody that's communicating,
right.
Advice or knowledge or whatever it is to the student. For me, I think, you communicate the information. It may or may not have been received in the way you intended it. And, 5 minutes later, it's forgotten.
Right.
If the person experiences it for themselves, they'll remember it.
Okay.
And then the subconscious keeps working. The subconscious keeps working.
Yeah.
And they will go into other.
Search. Text field. Top search result. Camera. 8 top search result. Camera. P.
Oh, who's doing that? Is that?
It's Steve. It's Steve's screen reader.
It's mine.
You might. I've muted you, Steve. You can unmute when you've got your screen writer under control.
I think it's trying to teach us.
It's probably doing a pretty good job at that.
Quentin, I was thinking maybe also empowering the students and validating the students' words, actually what they need and what they ask for.
Yes, although sometimes maybe they don't want to validate. They want to do the opposite to that and say, actually, no, that's wrong. I don't agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Linda.
For me, the role of a sensei is to be a guide, and I always picture that like a trail guide. So a teacher might tell someone about what a mountain looks like and what it is. A guide on a trail will take you to directly have that experience for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's someone who's been there before, knows the terrain.
Yeah, I like that. That's how I sort of see it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a nice word to use.
Trail guide, yeah.
So here's the question. Do you think the traditional version of a sensei, if we go back to sort of founders' days, all these words that we've used would have been the version of what a typical sensei is offered? No?
No. I think if I can jump in, some of them certainly, yes, but there are quite a number of things that we came up with that are about like sort of anticipating the needs of students and being able to provide for the needs of students. And while the relationship was definitely sort of a two-way relationship, the model of studentship was that you needed to sort of steal things from the teacher. The teacher was there as an example, right? And it was your job as the student to be empowered by your own desire to learn, right? To steal as much as you could. And so the model was very different. And so it was not so much the teacher looking out, oh, what do my students need? Oh, they're having trouble with this. Oh, I guess I'll work with that, right? I mean, there of course was a lot of care, right? And attention in both ways, but it expressed itself very differently. Okay. So I've heard.
Yeah, no, I think you've said very clearly what did happen. So here's the controversial question. That system was in place, well, for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Who are we to question it?
Yeah, but it was also in a different society.
Yeah, that's
different to the Western society. The society where the sensei originally was a person who went there because that was his calling, to follow that particular way of living. Yeah. In Western society, it's not the same. You look for a teacher, which is something completely different.
Right.
Quentin, I could just back up that point, because I agree with that. It's that over many centuries, the way people learn in all different parts of their lives have changed. So if you go back 50 or 100 years, people had very different experiences about the way schools and things were run. So somebody who went to a school in the 1920s would get to a dojo and react to it in a completely different way from someone, people like ourselves who, went to school first time sort of in the late 20th century or something. So the rest of the world's moved on. That pedagogy in general has moved on, and people just have different mental ways of learning things now. So Aikido teaching needs to move on with it. So something that worked 100 years ago won't work now.
I'll challenge you a little bit on that and say that I don't believe that people's ways of learning have changed at all, but what they will accept as an efficient way of learning has. So, if learning my timetables involves just repetition and beating me if I get it wrong, I'm not going to stand for that. That's not the way I wish to be educated.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
But
rote learning. People were used to rote learning, weren't they? So you got to a dojo, you get the equivalent sort of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, and there's also a major change that has happened is we've moved away from the master apprentice type of model in education generally. And is it surprising that we're moving away from that in teaching things like Aikido?
Okay, so how successful do you think we've been in that journey so far if we look across the piste of Aikido?
Personally, I think it's patchy.
Let's take a vote on that as we go around. Sean, patchy, making progress, nearly won the battle. Where are you at on that?
In terms of moving away from master and apprentice?
Yes.
Is that, I think that most teaching happens not in the master apprentice model, but I think that the model for becoming a sensei is definitely shackled to the master apprentice.
Yes, I think what Alec meant was I am the master, you will do as I say at all times type master. Right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, Alec, but is that
actually, yes, there is an element of that. Then there is also the element that Sean's referring to of the apprenticeship journeyman master journey, which is I think still very strongly reflected in the way a lot of Aikido is taught. And there are teachers who are very much master as in do as I say, without questioning it. And they are both, they're both there, and they're both historical ways of doing it. And I think in both cases, we're moving away from it.
Yeah.
And in both cases, I think our progress is patchy.
We're becoming more collegiate. I mean, just look at us all chatting away on this, this discussion tonight. It's actually a very collegiate approach to thinking about it and teasing things out. It's a big change, I think.
As opposed to, for example, Quentin as master telling us how a good way of doing it is.
I've got a feeling these sessions wouldn't be happening if I. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
I was just thinking that there is a development in Aikido, which is reflected in the development in the teaching of Aikido. I'm sure we all know have come across places where they're doing things the same way they did it 50 years ago, and there's been no development. So things develop.
Yeah, I personally, I put that down to the sort of the tradition of how Aikido's taught. My teacher did it this way, so I do it this way. And they're not given permission to do it any differently. But unfortunately, the photocopy as time goes past fades. So if anything, it goes backwards.
Yeah, can I just add something else in?
Of course you can.
We seem to be homing in on the sensei as the person at the front doing the teaching. But there are also, in most cases, other senseis on the mat. And I'm interested in the role that they play in the overall teaching process.
Can we come back to that next as a sort of topic to cover? John, you've been around, I mean, there are a good few on this call who've been around forever teaching Aikido. So how have you seen it change? Or has it never changed for you in the way it's taught and the way you wish to teach it? You just need to unmute. Still not unmuted.
Right.
John, over to you. You're good now.
I've lost about 10 minutes of that, Quentin. What was the question?
Okay. The question was, does the way you teach, because you taught for a long time now, does the way you teach now differ from how you taught at the start? And is it better or worse than it was? I mean, in your opinion, have you had to sort of dumb it down, or just now you have to teach it in a way that you don't feel comfortable with?
Well, obviously, I think it's better now for me because I've evolved with the club and the members, and I need to give them what they want. When I was younger, it was just fast and furious, bang, 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 all the time. But now it's much slower because of my age. But also, I have a smaller class as well. I mean, I'm going back when we had no less than 20 people on the mat. And now I'm really fortunate if I've got 5 to 6 people on the mat, and they're all downgrades. And then there's not the trickle coming through anymore of the Q grades. So it's not that drip feed happening anymore. So everything's changed for me.
Yeah, I don't think that's an uncommon experience.
No, it isn't. not by a long way.
Molly, I mean, again, you've been around for a long time, you've taught for quite a while. How's it changed for you, if at all?
Well, my general way of, I feel like we're all senseis. I mean, the person that steps on the mat for the first time or rolls on the mat or whatever shows up, at some level, they have become my teacher in that moment. I had the great fortune of being with Duran Sensei. He's my teacher, and he always welcomed a broad spectrum. Go train with other people. Always had that way. Generous human being. So I feel like in present time, how it's changed for me is that when I am in the position of being the seed for that moment, the teaching is being expressed through my presence, verbally, and everybody is, paying attention to what I have to offer in that moment. My community has expanded hugely. The access to what I have to offer, as well as the community that's offering. All of you. Really? What a magnificent opportunity in life.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this moment with all of you, in this moment, I have in Native American, we'd say I have a talking stick, right? I know I'm not going to be interrupted, that you're going to be holding a place of respect and honor and openness and all. I have that with you. Wow. And it's expanding my my field of contact with the bigger picture. And I hear there's language about that there's some kind of contraction happening, right, in Aikido. I think that we're experiencing the contraction that was already there, and we're actually being freed from it. So when we have an opportunity to be with 5 people, on the mat, in this mat, wow, amazing. And this whole, I don't see the contraction. I see only the expansion, and the young people, if you will, are coming. They're on their way. They're on their way because Aikido has a heart and a breadth and a love that they're seeking, or they are that thing, and they're finally realizing, my God, I'm just love, and so I have to be that thing. And how do I be that? Through my body.
Well, there's a good message.
So I'm only seeing the expansion. And for me, the change is, it's given me this incredible opportunity to be on the land that I'm on.
Yeah.
And be with the elements of the earth and the wind. And I feel like I'm with Sensei's, the thing that he was only on the mat, really, technically, for a few hours a day, or most of the time he was just in the natural world. And this pandemic and the teachings from all of you has brought me the opportunity to really be in the earth. So then I'm even indoors right now. Is pretty amazing because it's a stunning day here.
Yeah. Stop boasting again.
Well, no, I'll take you, in this thing that we are together, I'll take you outside and show you the transformation. We just moved a 20-year-old dogwood tree, but that's a story for another day. I'll be still.
Okay. Okay, let's come back to your point, Andrew, then. Okay, there's more than one sensei on the mat. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, it comes back to what you expect from your other downgrades. And we've all been in a situation, I'm sure, where you're trying to teach one thing on the mat, and you look around and you see that your downgrades are actually doing something quite different, which is not exactly helpful if you're trying to get your crew guys to do what you're doing. And so to have sort of downgrades that are sympathetic and aware of what's going on and can actually follow the theme of the lesson, I think is a great advantage.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I'd also say that obviously every partner you're in front of is a potential teacher, and indeed you're your own teacher.
Yeah.
And I think another quality that I would want from a teacher is, or guide or educator or coach, would be that they're open to being challenged and don't feel threatened by that. It comes back to your point, Liz, about always being the student. Just being open to the possibility that what you thought was right could conceivably be wrong because somebody's found the hole in it, and they might actually fill the knowledge in for you.
And also not wrong as in an on-off sort of thing, but something could have just changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, your body's changed, your partner's body's different, you know, so just something's different, you know. There.
Or whatever you're teaching actually doesn't work on their body.
Exactly.
You have to find a new way of doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's always more than one way of doing things as well. You know, there's always more than one solution for anything.
Absolutely. David.
Just in terms of a question, in terms of, you know, Sensei, are we just talking here a teacher by definition, or are we talking something bigger than that? I mean, I'm a black belt. I'm an instructor. I run a class from my teacher, but I'm only an extension of him. I don't classify myself as a sensei at all, not remotely. So I see some of the qualities we're talking about here are bigger qualities than I would be thinking about in terms of more of a global, more all-encompassing aspect, and maybe that's why I think in some ways the master pupil or master thing still possibly still exists. Maybe it's only my paradigm, I don't know, but I think we'd all be teachers, but I'm not too sure we can all be senseis in how I would envisage a sensei thing, to be honest.
Okay, but that's all. We'll get you to expand on what your vision of a sensei is. But for me, I mean, if you're on the mat and you're leading the class, you may not know as much as your sensei, but for the people below you on that mat on that day, you are the sensei.
I believe I'm their instructor or their guide, or they're helping them develop their Aikido, but I think some of the other aspects in terms of something that we've gone through in terms of, I don't know, nurturing, managing people, bits and pieces. Yeah, maybe those qualities have got, but I see the sensei as a slightly bigger role than that, and maybe.
Okay, so if we look at some of the greats out there, some of the people that are big names in the Aikido world, how many of those people do you think have all the qualities that we listed? Because I can't think of many. I mean, I do know a few, but I can't think of that many compared to the number of people I've trained with. Most of them lack some of those skills and qualities, and actually they may be brilliant on the mat, but they're not always great teachers, educators, coaches.
David, can I just say, Ben, what I said at the very beginning about humility, you've got it in spades, absolute spades. So you're a brilliant sensei from my point of view.
Well, yeah, maybe I've got humility, but I just yeah, I'm happy to be corrected, but I just see it as being there's some, maybe I'm I don't know, in the realm of the honorific hierarchy of the Japanese martial art, perhaps. I don't know, but I think there's something about a teacher, but there's also, I think, sensei's there's something more about it. There's maybe a bigger aspect.
I think that so often you hear of people who are great.
Thank you, Liz, by the way.
Are great at what they do, and they'll say something like, yeah, but I'm nothing compared to my teacher. Because that's how they see it. And I agree with Liz. I think that you bring much more to the mat than you believe. Just for example, all these new skills you've learned through Feldenkrais. Well, your sort of teachers haven't been through that model. They don't have the knowledge and the skills that you've learned from that, which are definitely useful to Aikido. So please don't do yourself down.
No, I'm not doing myself down. I'm not saying I'm a bad instructor or a good instructor or what. I see the, and I'm happy if you want to say Sensei is a teacher, then that's fine. I'll count myself in that thing. But I see there's something more than that, and I'm definitely bringing all those other skills and the skills I've learned from the last 10 months of these discussions as well. So that's something, I'm hopefully a better instructor when I go back on the mat than I will.
Okay, hands up if you've learned lots over this last year through these sessions.
Yay, yes.
Yay. Hey,
We're all in the same boat, buddy. We're all finding stuff new to learn and hopefully go back stronger than when we started.
David, I want to just address something here. So in the lineage through which I have come to my title, if you will, of sensei, I was allowed to teach by Duran and take over an Aikido club when I just got my first degree black belt. And he said to me, you can totally teach, but don't have them call you sensei. That's what he said. In our system, the sensei title does not come until fourth dan. At that point, we are honored to be able to use that title if we choose, or to be seen as that, because the fourth dan is, yes, it's by how many days you've been on the mat, but it is also by invitation. It's also by invitation and honor and respect and those things. So I don't have any knowledge of how many degrees of black belt you
Mine's
have.
the same, Molly. In terms of the official senseis of our organization, they're all fourth dan.
Yeah.
So that's not a model I've come across. I can certainly see benefits in doing that, but I don't think that's all that common. Can people put me right or wrong on that?
Yeah, can I just chip in there?
Yeah.
If you think about these great senseis aren't going to be there forever, as we have seen sort of quite recently. Yeah. So we decided in my dojo, we tried to bring on some of the younger instructors, and the different what then happens if I'm in their class and they're teaching, I then have to think about how I react in that situation.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good exercise to go through, I think. Linda, sorry, I didn't come back to you earlier. I am now.
That's okay. Yeah, I totally see where David's coming from, I think, and Molly as well. That's very similar to the lineage that I've come up in. For us, I think I haven't heard so much that, fourth dan and above it's not quite that clear. But for me, there's one sensei in a school. That's the person who leads the school, who sets the standards, who says who we are as a community. And there are lots of other instructors. They can be very good instructors, senior instructors, doesn't matter the rank, but the person who's in charge of that dojo is the sensei.
Of the dojo or the association?
The dojo.
Okay, fine.
The dojo.
All right, yeah. Sean?
I, as with everyone, I think, also agree that we have this intuitive sense of a distinction between the person who's leading a class and a sensei. And we started this by discussing, things that we think, qualities we think good instructors should have, but this mythos of the sensei, what makes someone different from an instructor to a sensei, I think is something that's worth addressing. Linda has said, it's the person that runs the dojo. Maybe there are other qualities that go with it, but I'm interested to hear what people's ideas are what makes that difference, so
Hmm.
that in our own training, perhaps we can aim to achieve that difference. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And in our system, there are very clear, specific techniques that you're supposed to be able to express. And then there is the freeing of that skeleton as you go along, that anchor point of expression. And it's rigorous, really. It's like a, yes, if you would like to be moved in this way, then here is what you need to be able to express with clarity in the art itself. So Duran, if you want basics with clarity and honor and invitation and respect, you're going to get that piece from him. And then if there is, yes, there's the invitation for your second dawn and your third dawn and your fourth and your fifth and your, that there is actually a pathway of moving through that. That's very clear. And there's an honor and respect in you know, you can, anyway, I've appreciated that flow because the people that have come out have been vital in their art and the expression and their open-heartedness.
I would say that knowing just a little bit about Californian Aikido, it's hard to argue that the model seems to work. There are a lot of good people that have come out of that part of the world, presumably working from that sort of model.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that grading is such shall we say, a controversial subject, and one person's 7th dan is another person's not even worthy of a white belt kind of thing. So having a really clear system which defines, well, this is what they've done to achieve that, strikes me as a really good thing. And it also shows a clarity of purpose for Aikido to me. So that's one of the things that I think is essential in choosing your teacher, is that you pick a teacher who's aligned with what you want to learn.
Yeah, that's why Sensei always sent us out. Go out, train with other people. You know, it was important. It was important to
Well,
us.
let's pick up on that point, because that in itself typically is quite a controversial thing to have done. Most of the teachers say, don't you dare train with anyone else, they'll spoil what I'm teaching you. That's what they would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how, okay, so how do people around the room feel about that one? Because it is quite a common view.
I've certainly, I mean, both Liz and I came from a school which was very like that.
You did, and so did I.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, looking back on it, I think it kind of hobbles your view of the world. And there are a lot of people that are still in that school who I think really need to see what's out in the big wide world and experience what's out in the big wide world, rather than accept a received narrative of this is the way to do it because we're told this is the way to do it. They've got to go out and experience it. I'm absolutely now convinced that's the only real way to truly understand what you're learning at your dojo, is to go to other dojos.
Having traveled down a similar path to yourself, the organization you're talking about did a brilliant job of giving us great grounding.
Yep.
But there came a point where actually my learning was stultified. I didn't even know there were any other Aikidos. I genuinely didn't. I didn't know there was anybody else doing it. And it's only when I kind of fell out and left that I discovered there was a whole world of stuff going on out there, and my learning just went whoosh.
Yeah.
Once I did it, I discovered lots of stuff I didn't like, but an awful lot of stuff that I did.
Yeah, for me, it was the journey to Moscow meant that I had to, be diplomatic because, hey, it was a diplomatic posting, but I had to be diplomatic with the other Aikidos I came across. And that meant being a guest and hosting, which,
that's right.
If I'd have done that back in Great Britain, gosh, the key police would have been on me in no time.
They would, yeah. You'd have been drummed out the brownies, no doubt about it. So who else has got a view on this?
I think it's important that when you start in a particular school, you first have to have a grounding before you can go out and learn. Because if you go out too early, you're just going to have a very wishy-washy kind of a idea of what Aikido is. And it's important to get first a grounding and some sort of an understanding. And then on that, you go out and you can compare what you're experiencing outside to what you know.
Yeah.
Could I back that up? Think about the grounding. That's really important, because the first time I stepped on an Aikido mat, I knew nothing about it, and so you're really quite vulnerable. And if you're sort of going to lots of different dojos at that point, then getting to grips with it's going to be really difficult. If you settle in one dojo and you've got one teacher who takes responsibility for a few years, that really gets you started. And once you're Dan grade plus, then you can actually, I think, go on a bit more of a tour, because you've got a solid basis behind you, and you can actually learn. You've got an idea of what you're looking for.
In fact, that's what I call the journeyman phase.
Yeah, it's.
I had quite the opposite experience. My teachers always encouraged me to go off, and I'm prone to going off and wandering, and he's encouraged it. The first seminar I went to outside of our dojo was as a 6th Q. I went to one of the big bridge seminars here with Ikeda Sensei, Tessier Sensei, and Doran, and about 6 other people. And having that big picture perspective really helped me. Like, if I kind of always associate this with like being a chef, if you specialize in Northern Italian cuisine, that's great, but having a bigger picture of what else is available and where that fits into the world and how it's different and what else, and hearing things from different perspectives was such a help to me. And I've been going to that seminar and others, as much as I can for years, and really have enjoyed it. And I think it enhanced my understanding of what I was learning at my home dojo rather than making it mushy and fuzzy.
Yeah, that's good.
I came up in the school of you will just do this and you won't go anywhere else. My sympathies, though, are with you, Linda. My point would be, although I think there is a lot to be said in having a really good grounding from one school.
Absolutely.
Who is?
Oh, I've stuck with the same school the whole time, and that's what but having the bigger picture.
Sure.
I haven't been dojo hunting, none of that.
But I think what I would say is who it's not the sensei's decision as to how the learning journey goes on. So if I want to go around 2 or 3 different styles, why should I be stopped?
Because it might make the instructor feel insecure in himself if you go elsewhere.
Do we, as a good sensei, should I feel insecure about that? My version, with my own person opinion is that do what you want. It's your life, and if I feel
exactly,
insecure,
you might
problem.
lose a few. You might have students who wander off. Maybe they're better suited to Okinawan karate, whatever. But great.
And it's the power of the collegiate approach again, isn't it? They might that we're part of a broader college of Aikido, actually.
Yes, I mean, some people might learn better by having that broader base. I don't think it's it's my responsibility as the teacher to say you can't do that. If you do that, you can't train here.
Yeah. And individual students thrive differently. I mean, we've all come across probably what I would call the martial
Oh
arts
God, yeah, I was
tourist,
just thinking about them. Yeah.
who goes to many, many
Yeah.
different classes of many, many different styles and never really scratches the surface of any of them.
Sure.
But it's his life or her life, and it's their choice, and it's not for us perhaps to.
I'll tell you one thing where I've had conversations with the martial arts tourists, and it doesn't apply to what we're saying in Aikido because we fundamentally share the same operating system. So we might move to another dojo, but there's a whole load of shared assumptions and ways, which are there to support us. But with the martial arts tourists, they literally go and collect a few techniques from arts, different arts, don't they? And they think martial arts is a collection of techniques. And I've done several arts in some depth, karate and jiu-jitsu and aikido. And I said to them, no, it's not like that. They're not collections of techniques. To get really good, every art has its own fundamental operating system. You have to train long enough and hard enough so that the operating system sort of boots up, and then you can really do stuff. I said, I explained to them, the reason Muhammad Ali was such a superb boxer wasn't the techniques that he knew, but he spent decades training up his operating system. And if you do the tourist thing, you never actually do that. You don't get the fundamental underpinning that you need to drive it.
That may be so, but there's another possibility. If you understand the structure of operating systems, you're finding the operating system for operating systems. It's a meta level. And if you can do that, then you can plug into almost any operating system if it's within your capacity at all.
Yeah.
And again, I'd say you're right. You can't get to your operating system of operating systems by dipping a toe in here and dipping a toe in there, I don't think.
Depends what you're dipping your toe into and how you're doing it.
Also, Alec, who are we to say? Because none of us have done that.
No,
perhaps
it's not. We've
for
not
that person, it really works for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I think that the student that actually that comes and keeps coming to Aikido, that the question of going elsewhere doesn't even arise, except within the originally, except under the umbrella under which they are. So, being in the Bay Area, the umbrella was vast, and so if my teacher was saying go, you didn't even. It was already because the family was already expanded, and so there was a safety umbrella within that was broad, and then you could go out and I did one just from the outside observe a Chiba class, and that was sufficient for me. And so there were teachers that I went to and teachers that were like.
Okay, so you've touched on a touchy subject, so to speak, which I think is worthy of a discussion, which is that does anything the sensei does it go?
No.
No.
Are we?
Boundaries. Yeah. Need boundaries.
What's the sort of contract that students should be taking on?
Mutual respect.
Which contract? There are going to be people who I know somebody fairly close by whose students are expected to worship the ground they stand on. I think that's silly, but they think it's good.
I've met that, seen exactly that. For me, it has to be about mutual respect.
Well, I guess it's about offering clear lines, isn't it? Right at the beginning. So if you say right at the beginning, this is how it works, and people sign up for that. Again, who am I to say, well, that seems like a daft thing to have signed up to?
Why not? You can say it if you wish. If a student comes into a dojo where the clear expectation is that they will be used by the sensei for one thing or another, and you say that's stupid, they may be in a stage in their life where they need to be misused or something. You can say it, but they may not understand it or agree with it.
Yes.
And I think they should have called it Kikido, though. So it was more of this kind of thing going on. But, clearly there have been wonderful people that have come through that channel.
So let's flip this round and say, okay, we have an awful lot of sensei on this call. I think all of you have taught at some time, if not all the time. What's your expectation of your students? So let me start with, because you've just come on, Jamie. What's your expectation of the people who show up on your mat and when they were in your dojo?
Expectation in what sense?
What do you expect from your students in terms of behaviors and what they should be doing when they're coming to your club or your mat?
Good questions. Sorry, I missed earlier. We had a power outage and just now I've internet and back up and running. So I wish I had the background from things you've all talked about so far.
This is a brand new topic, so you've got a blank sheet to write on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Expectations of students. One is engagement. And I think showing up to train, showing up with sincerity, showing up with energy and openness of heart and mind. Engagement in terms of, and respectful engagement with each other, with the art, with the instructor, me or whoever's there. So I think a respectful, open, heartful attitude. And, we talk about beginner's mind, that's for everybody, but in the sense of really being open to learning and to taking the dojo as a real laboratory, a place to try, to experiment, to grow, to learn, and to try stuff out, and with each other. Engagement, the dojo's got a lot of volunteerism in order to make it happen. And so, I don't think we can require that of anybody. People do that on their own. And yet that's kind of an ethic, I think, in the dojo, as far as, you volunteer to sweep, you volunteer to help, you volunteer to organize, you just volunteer. There's so many ways to help out. So that, I guess it's a community-minded thing. You can't require that of anybody. And some people get more engaged on those kinds of levels. So that's not really required. But I think the training spirit's really important. And that, we have to kind of inculcate that. I don't think that it's blind obedience and blind just bowing. I think that I think as a teacher, I want to also create an atmosphere where people can ask questions, can engage, can offer their opinions, can question, and so that we can learn together and we can contribute together. So it's kind of finding that mix. And I think for me, what's been really interesting, and it's very interesting now, is we're sort of, in a sense, questioning the traditions, the hierarchy, and the whole structure of Aikido, the power structure. How do we what kind of blend do we have of that traditional models with what's current, what's relevant, what's real, what fits us, that does keep a mutual respect and in a certain sense, an egalitarianism within a hierarchy? I think that's a really big question.
So nice phrase, I like it. I'm going to put you on pause just purely because when we went through qualities of a teacher, I made everybody up for something rather than, but you've covered the subject really well in terms of what we might expect from our students. So let me open it up to others and see what they would expect of their students. So Gordon, do you want to offer something? What do you expect?
Yes, my wish is that I will become redundant.
That they strive to make you redundant. I like it.
Or let's just say that they no longer need me.
Okay, that's probably better because you do want to carry on practicing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paul, what about you?
One of my students once said, Paul, long after you're dead, I'll be teaching this stuff in places you can't even begin to imagine. That was wonderful. That's what I would like.
So you want to get your students to a place where they can continue the journey.
Their journey, yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. But also probably taking on board your journey as well. They wouldn't have got where they are to do it. What about you, John?
For me, it would be dedication and a degree of commitment to the club and fellow members.
Andre?
The dojo means a practice hall. And if you don't practice, you don't get anywhere. You don't suddenly become an expert at something. You become an expert by long practice. So practice.
So you expect people just to be willing to do that?
Yeah.
That sounds good to me. Hugh, you've been very quiet.
Do that. Okay. It's a very complex question, actually.
That's what
and
it's Hugh.
Yeah, I know, and so it's difficult to deliver a very simple answer. But I think you know, respect is to everyone is key and the tradition. But I do think that we live in apart from, you know, actually probably several of you out there who I would call full-time teachers of this art. For the majority of people and for the majority of dojos, there's a necessity really to market the art and market for the teacher to market themselves to the customer, which is the student, because the competition is not just another dojo or another sensei. It's a completely different activity in life.
Sure.
And if this thing is going to grow, which we all hope it will, but which it isn't at the moment, then I think that there needs to be a bit of a radical rethink of the way it's done. And actually tonight's subject of what a teacher means. I mean, I think in any walk of life, you kind of earn a title. A title is just a nameplate on a door to some extent, but it's something that you earn through respect. So it is not a given. I think a lot of people take this title on when they have the first opportunity as a given and expect a particular reaction from students and expect a particular behavior. I think other than the very, very, you know, senior and full, and I agree with your point, by the way, senior rank doesn't mean good teaching at all. But one thing I would say is that when, if you meet somebody who is teaching very regularly, I observe they actually make very few mistakes in terms of the techniques they're doing, because they're doing it repetitively and it's kind of working. I think for the majority of teaching for part-timers, definitely I would include myself in that, we're probably constantly making mistakes. And there are only three things that happen in Aikido. One is whatever it is one's trying to do really doesn't work, but generally speaking, you can rule that out because it's been going a long time and people have made it work. Secondly, you're not explaining it right. So you need to learn very rapidly from students. Not that they're stupid or that they, you know, they're just doing it wrong. The third element is they are generally doing it wrong. But the big element is it isn't being explained properly. So you need to be able to learn very rapidly when somebody isn't picking up on something and explain it in a different way.
Yeah.
Hopefully only once more so that they do get it. So I think it's a big two-way flow. I mean, the students, for me, if I'm privileged enough to be out there on the mat, the students are my teachers.
Okay, I like it. I'm not sure you answered the question what you expected of your students, but I love the fact that you came up with the fact that teachers need to have great communication skills. And that means communicating in lots of different modes, really, because it does differ from student to student, and having different words to explain things, as well as, you know, using touch and sight and all the other things.
The biggest thing I really want from students is a smile on their face. Actually, I want people to enjoy it. I want them to leave with a buzz.
That's a great point too. Thank you, Hugh. Frank, so here you are making this dojo in Kenya buzz. What do you expect from your students?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
And he's Tiger, not Frank.
He responded. What do you expect from your students?
So one, I expect them to enjoy the class and have that motivation. As a reader, you have to have, like the speaker who have just spoken, the different communication skills, because we have different people learn in different way. You'll find someone is very sharp learning techniques, someone is very slow. So as a reader, you have to have some patience and also be able to learn also from the mistakes and things that you're doing to improve your teaching. The same, you need to teach your students, because one time the student you're teaching, they'll be teachers also.
Well, you know, as I said, there are a lot of teachers on this call, and I think we'd probably all agree that teaching is just a brilliant way to learn.
Yes.
The best way to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, what about you? You've been relatively quiet, and in some ways you were the one that this topic is all for.
Yeah, well, I was thinking a lot of talking here. I resonate firstly with David. For me, it changed completely my relationship with my senseis. By the time I started to have a relationship with them in my personal life, just like my highest ranked sensei, which was responsible for our grading. We live very close to each other, so at least once a week we shared a lift to the dojo. So by the time we have time talking about our lives together, it changes completely my relationship with him, as a respect, as really seeing him as a human being, not as a sensei that I just get in the dojo and, oh my God, there's the super sensei, who's him, you know, and that I should be afraid of, or I couldn't ask anything. And by the time we became more close to each other, at some times, okay, he was showing a technique, and then he was walking from the mat, and then I pushed him from my side, and I said, oh, what about this type of video, for instance? So we started a personal sharing. That for me, it's really enriching. So when I think about my students from now and my future students, it's like I have a commitment of opening my personal life. I am a human being before being a sensei or an architect or whatever I am. And then I really hope that my students can open themselves, just like they are a human being. They are not. Can you listen to me? I don't know if my internet. Oh yeah. So I really hope that they are not only at the class for that 1 hour class, and they have their personal life, and then they just don't bring that to the mat, so the mat can help them to be better human beings outside. So I think it's that part of commitment for really practicing as a student and as a sensei forever, just like as a human being, bringing our truth, our personal side. So
certainly
something that I keep thinking about everyone that I listen, talking a little, Hugh also, and Molly and everyone.
Certainly for me, it's really important to know something about my students' personal lives, because it gives me real insight into what might work for them when I'm teaching. You've touched on the last important subject I'd like to cover, which is where do the boundaries of a sensei stop? Because I can think of teachers who, you know, it's sensei wherever they go, in whatever circumstances, they're always right. You never question them. It's not just the mat.
There's a few of them around.
The ones that made me laugh were the ones that made a complete holics of their lives in most of the respects, but still were convinced they were right because they were the sensei.
And could actually lecture you on every aspect of your personal life. Yes, that sort of was quite amusing.
So I take it there's quite a strong feeling that maybe, just maybe, it should stop on the mat in most cases.
If that. There are some senseis that should be maybe put on a leash and guided a little. That's normal. There's always people.
To be fair,
okay,
I've seen that same tendency in all sorts of different areas. You know, you get someone who gets really, really expert in something, and it could be anything, couldn't it? It could be in a legal profession or something. And because they are so highly trained and so highly educated and so skilled in that area, they tend to sort of assume that that expertise translates to absolutely everything in life, and it doesn't. You know, and as human beings, we are reliant on each of us developing our own areas of expertise and skills and contributing that, and relying on other human beings to do their bit and contributing their knowledge and skills. And so it's back to being humility again, isn't it? It's understanding that just because you've learnt and trained to become a top sensei, that doesn't make you the last word on every subject under the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. Those who have taught for a long time, or even those who've taught for a short time, probably have found students asking questions that don't actually relate to technique at all. It'll be life situations. How do you feel about that?
I want to pick up on something Paul said. Some should be put on a leash. Which is really awesome. But I mean, I think it's really a big issue in terms of, this is something that I'm grappling with, and we're going to be talking about more, is sort of there's so many inherent contradictions. And it's like, well, it seems that Aikido itself should make us better human beings. And then you find out that, you know, some senseis, especially when we just give so much power over to people off the mat as well, and are, you know, bowing down, power is rife for abuse by anybody, whether you do Aikido or not. And so, you know, some people are not so great human beings. Some great senseis.
Why should Aikido make us a better human being? I think it's how you do Aikido that makes you a better human being through Aikido.
Indeed.
You have to be a better human being to choose to do Aikido that way.
If that's the case, Paul, then all these people who are brilliant at Aikido on the mat should be brilliant human beings, shouldn't they?
They should be.
Well, it depends what you mean by brilliant human beings.
Okay, well, we could get down to definitions.
Well,
I think that's what I mean.
But well, I think I know what you mean, and I agree. Just because you're good at putting a Nikkyo on doesn't mean you know who should be Nikkyo'd and when. You can be a complete jerk and do a good Nikkyo.
Well, theoretically, to me, theoretically, what we study and practice, the actual philosophy, it should have something to do with making us better human beings. But, you know, we find that discrepancy in religions, for example, I mean, in anything. But so something else I wanted to say is, just to tie back for a second, is I think that part of the job of the teacher, and sensei means one who's come before, but to me, it's kind of being the inspirer in chief. If I can really inspire people, I may not know everything to teach them, but, you know, if I can inspire them, and we can be an inspired community supporting each other, that's pretty cool.
Trump, he was very inspirational for some people.
All right, Paul. Not exactly what I meant. I think you all know what I mean. Let me just say one other thing. This is a really kind of interesting example, which is in Israel. So there's some, you know, I teach a lot of dojos, and one in particular I go to a lot, and so that's great. And a guy who is like maybe 4th Q, white belt, and it turns out he's a heart surgeon. He's a pediatric heart surgeon. And about, some of you know, a couple of years ago, my wife had a weird pericardial effusion, it's called. So thank God she's better. But that was a really rough period when she was going through that. And so, you know, I consulted with him. It was really interesting. You know, so here we were, I'm, you know, sensei, and, you know, the visiting sensei and the whole bit on the mat. And you know what, second class was over, I'm like, cardio surgeon sensei.
Yeah.
You know, and he gave me information, he gave me support, and it was great. You know, we just kind of switched roles. The second class was over, and I certainly had plenty of respect for him on the mat. He had plenty of respect for me off the mat. So that's just a nice example, and I think that we really need to stay aware of, you know, yeah, we're sensei and on the mat, but you know, who are the people who are training? There's some incredible people, and off the mat.
we were
So I think
saying
that's really
earlier-
important to stay aware of.
we were saying earlier, Jamie, that one of the skills that a good sensei should have is really knowing where their students' boundaries are and where to push them from and make them become better and more proficient at whatever they're seeking to do. But it seems to me that also we should know our own boundaries, know when to actually bow down to somebody else who's got greater knowledge, and you know, and know where we're expert at and where we can genuinely make a difference. That's just as important. Yeah,
that's the problem with the beginner's mind. If you really have a beginner, somebody who has nothing in their mind, then you're okay with that. But if you have somebody coming on who has skills and knowledge and has already lived, they should be able to contribute something from their expertise.
Yeah.
Let me say one more thing. I think we have to be aware of appearances. What do I mean by that? So when I got to the dojo one night, this was in the beginning of this whole experience around the heart thing, I pulled the sensei aside and we were talking. He's like, you know, Manishima, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And then I said what was going on. And he said to me, do you know, and he pointed to the student, this man, did you know that he's a cardiac surgeon? And I'm like, I did not know that. I had no idea. I would have never in a million years, if I looked at him on the mat. He was, you know, he was kind of a brainiac. He wasn't a somatic guy. He wasn't an athlete. So if I just looked at him in his gi and his white belt on the mat, I would have had no idea who he was and the level he was at in his profession. So I think it's really important, you know, not to go by just what you see. And especially if you're looking at students, you know, somebody could be a white belt or whatever they are, or new in Aikido or not so great in Aikido. That doesn't mean they're not like amazing off the mat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Guys and girls, I think we've really covered this subject to a good degree, and I'm going to propose that we close. But if anyone has any final comments they want to offer, of course you should do so. Hugh.
Quentin, just very quick, I mean, just to endorse Jamie's thing on inspiration. It's very common for movie stars and famous people to be interviewed, and a common theme there, you know, what got you started, and it was the inspiration of a particular teacher who was Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, who is still teaching 40 years, 50 years later to a small class of kids in a deprived area somewhere, or whatever the backstory is.
Sure.
But they remember the inspiration of that individual, who may not be a great sort of Shihan in their world. So I'd just like to endorse that.
It's a fantastic point, because
yeah,
one of the things that keeps me going is occasionally getting stories from students who come back and say, I heard you saying this to me when this situation happened and it made a huge difference. So you never know what you leave with students. And some of those are people who didn't stay very long. It's just, so you just never know.
Absolutely. Joe. And then finally, a challenge for Paul, I think that we should all endorse, is that if Paul could just come up with a list of the great and the good in the Aikido world with their ranks, and then award them a colored leash and present it to us next week.
I think it's easier to come up with the ones who should be leashed and their colors taken away. But
okay.
Is that a blacklist?
I'm not sure we want this recorded. It's up to you, Paul.
Definitely not.
Joe, would you like to close the session?
Yes, one last word. So as we have been talking, Quentin, your article on the art of ukemi, it has been helping me this week mostly. But of course, I'm getting back that over and over, and there's a lot about that. Even that part that to say we need to trust our uke or our nagi with our own bodies. So we are, as a teacher or as a student, we are delivering our own bodies to the other one. So I think it's part of that. It's for me at least. I can deliver my body to somebody else without knowing them personally or showing my personal side. So if anyone should or want to read that article, it's very, very special. It's something for every day.
Thank you.
I'd like to say one thing.
Oh.
Frank Duran on my Shodan test made a comment that I'm still learning from almost 40 years later. I think that was brilliant.
Great stuff. Thank you all so much. It's been a rich conversation, as it usually is. Jamie, are we going to be able to organise the sort of Sea Grant program thing for next week, do you think?
You know, I was just talking with our committee about that.